Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sham Vishnupat Param Sivarachakacharya Shtottara Shadda Swami Grace Abhacharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Kamthanda Jai be the founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Granta Rachima Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitya Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7. Text 26. Bhume suretara varuta vimaditaya. Bhume suretara varuta vimaditaya. Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha. Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha. Chata karishyati chananu palakshya margaha. Chata karishyati chananu palakshya margaha. Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. Bhume suretara varuta vimarditaya. Klesha vyayaya kalaya shrita Krishna kesha. Chata karishyati chananu palakshya margaha. Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. Ume suretara varuta vimaritaya. Kresha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha. Jana karishyati jananu palakshya margaha. Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. Ume suretara varuta vimaritaya. Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha. Chata karishyati janana palakshya margaha. Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. Bhume suretara varuta vimaritaya. Klesha vyayaya kalaya sita Krishna kesha. Jana karishyati janana palakshya margaha. Karmani chatma mahimo panibandhanani. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Bhaktivinoda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with His plenary portion. The Lord comes in His original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand His transcendental glories, He acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great He is. Purport. This verse is especially describing the appearance of Lord Krishna and His immediate expansion, Lord Baladev. Both Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev are one Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is omnipotent and He expands Himself in innumerable forms and energies, and the whole unit is known as the One Supreme Brahman. Such extensions of the Lord are divided into two divisions, namely personal and differential. The personal expansions are called the Vishnu Tattvas, and the differential expansions are called the Jiva Tattvas. And in such expansional activity, Lord Baladev is the first personal expansion of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Vishnu Purana as well as in the Mahabharata, both Krishna and Baladev are mentioned as having beautiful black hair, even in their advanced stage. The Lord is called Anupalakshya Margaha, or in still more technical Vedic terms, Avan Manasa Gocharaha, one who is never to be seen or realized by the limited sense perception of the people in general. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.25, it is said by the Lord, Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavrittaham. In other words, He reserves the right of not being exposed to anyone and everyone. Only the bona fide devotees can know Him by His specific symptoms, and out of many such symptoms, one symptom is mentioned here in this verse, that the Lord is Sita Krishna Keshaha, or one who is observed always with beautiful black hair. Both Lord Krishna and Lord Baladev have such hair on their heads, and thus even in advanced age they appeared like young boys 16 years old. That is the particular symptom of the personality of Godhead. In the Brahma Samhita it is stated that although he is the oldest personality among all living entities, he always looks like a new, youthful boy. That is the characteristics of a spiritual body. The material body is symptomized by birth, death, old age and diseases, but the spiritual body is conspicuous by the absence of those symptoms. Living entities who reside in the Vaikuntha Lokas in eternal life and bliss have the same type of spiritual body without being affected by any signs of old age. It is described in the Bhagavatam, Canto 6, that a party of Vishnudutas who came to deliver Achamil from the clutches of the party of Yamaraj appeared like youthful boys, corroborating the description in this verse. It is ascertained that the spiritual bodies in the Vaikuntha lokas, either of the Lord or of the other inhabitants, are completely distinct from the material bodies of this world. Therefore, when the Lord descends from that world to this world, he descends in his spiritual body of Atma Maya, or internal potency, without any touch of the Bahiranga Maya, or external material energy. The allegation that the impersonal Brahman appears in this world by accepting a material body is quite absurd. Therefore, the Lord, when he comes here, has not a material body, but a spiritual body. The impersonal Brahmachyoti is only the glaring effulgence of the body of the Lord, and there is no difference in quality between the body of the Lord and the impersonal ray of the Lord, called Brahmachyoti. Now the question is, why the Lord, who is omnipotent, comes here to diminish the burden created upon the world by the unscrupulous kingly order? Certainly, the Lord does not need to come here personally for such purposes, but he actually descends to exhibit his transcendental activities in order to encourage his pure devotees who want to enjoy life by chanting the glories of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:13-14, it is stated that the Mahatmas, great devotees of the Lord, take pleasure in chanting of the activities of the Lord. All Vedic literatures are meant for turning one's attention towards the Lord and his transcendental activities. Thus, the activities of the Lord in his dealings with worldly people create a subject matter for discussion by his pure devotees. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gananchana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Upapakadamam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamshcha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitamtam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamshcha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Nanostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpadurubhascha Kripa Sindhyabhevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you for coming or watching online. Today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we have been discussing in the past few weeks now the beautiful descriptions of Lord Brahma to Narad Muni about the many of the Lord's incarnations, and the past several verses have described some pastimes or glories of Lord Ramachandra, the other incarnation of the Lord where he acts just like a human being. And today, finally, we come to Lord Krishna himself. And so like we just heard this beautiful, quite extensive purport of Srila Prabhupada. And from that, I guess you can already guess that today's class won't be on Krishna's Leela, but Prabhupada here sets up the correct understanding of Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan, first of all as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not to be mistaken as an ordinary human being. And as we also heard some of that in the case of Lord Ramachandra, especially in regard to his eternal consort, Mother Sita. And so today also the focus is on that. And because after all also we are, in that regard, we are now in the second canto, so we know that Srila Prabhupada describes the whole Bhagavatam, all the cantos build up from approaching the Lord from his lotus feet, and so second canto is still lotus feet, so gradually up to his lotus face, which then is represented by the 10th canto, where we then actually go into Krishna Lila. And even there we know, like even in Krishna book, Prabhupada put so much philosophy because if we don't see it from a proper perspective, with proper knowledge, then we just do aparad and can't make much progress even by hearing the most glorious pastimes of the Lord in his form as Lord Krishna himself. So, and the first point Prabhupada makes about Krishna and Baladev, because like in the verse we hear the word Kalaya, which means along with his plenary expansions, and Prabhupada points out that this especially refers to Lord Balaram, but of course the Lord comes with all expansions, is always with him. Like Prabhupada says that the Lord is omnipotent and he expands himself in innumerable forms and energies, and the whole unit is known as the one supreme Brahman. So we know he, like a gross example is the Prabhupada always gives of like just as even in the material world when a king comes, he never goes alone, but has his whole entourage. Similarly, the Lord always descends with his personal expansions as well as with his personal associates with the devotees, and that's what Prabhupada then explains, that there's those two divisions of personal and differential expansions, namely the Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattvas. And of course we know a bit more in detail than actually like those personal associates, like the gopis, they are not even Jiva Tattvas like us, but they are like directly from expansions of Srimati Radharani, so from Shakti Tattva, from his Hladini potency. But in general, simplified, we can understand that there's his personal expansions as well as then the separated expansions, the Jiva Tattvas, of which we are part of. And and then the next point Prabhupada points out, which also comes directly from the verse, namely Anupalakshya Margaha, which means Anupalakshya means rarely to be seen, and Margaha means path. So, as Prabhupada explains here, that this means that the Lord can never be approached by our mundane senses. And in another purport, I remember Prabhupada, there's the same word is used, and there he explains that it also means that, I think that's when he's speaking to Uddhava, but I can't remember for sure, that this also refers to this margaha, this path to bhakti yoga, that is the path which is itself, it's anupalakshya, so it cannot be seen by outsiders, it cannot be understood, and that is the path by which you can approach. And Krishna, who himself is also anupalakshya margaha, who is not to be approached or seen by our mundane senses. So, as we famously know, Krishna can only be understood by bhakti yoga out of his causeless mercy. And then the next point Prabhupada points out is about, again from the verse Sita Krishna Keshaha, which means the beautiful, not only beautiful but also black hair. So Sita Krishna, Sita means beautiful apparently, and Krishna black, as we know. And Prabhupada tells here that Krishna and Balaram, their hair never gets grey, obviously, because they have transcendental bodies, and so that's one of the many features of their beauty, their beautiful blackish curly hair. And Prabhupada also gives that as not only like here in the properties said, even in advanced stage, it's like that, but we know even at Krishna's birth as well. On the other hand, the Prabhupada also uses that as one evidence that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the way he appears in the prison house of Kamsa, is the son of Devaki and Vasudeva, he immediately has his beautiful hair and of course and all the jewels and crown and everything, so he doesn't appear as an ordinary baby. even though then, upon their request, he takes up or rather, first he appears as Lord Vishnu and then transforms and takes the form of a baby, but still, like, with his beautiful hair also is one of those features present at that time. And and then the next, so in that regard, then also Prabhupada quotes Lord Brahma from Brahma Samhita, one of the famous verses that Prabhupada actually, this Premanchana Trita Bhakti Vilochanena, as well as this one, Advaita Machyuta Manadin Anantarupam, is he recommended to every day recite to the deities, to Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. They're very important. Premanchana Trita Bhakti Vilochanena, like reminding us that the point we already mentioned, that we can never see the Lord by our endeavor or any other thing other than by love, and thus, inducing the Lord's causeless mercy upon us. And this verse, Advaita Machyuta Manadin Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanamcha, the second line is what Prabhupada quotes here, establishes, very nicely his position of like that as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, so being unlimited without beginning or end, and this line, the second line, explaining that even though he is the oldest, he still always appears as a fresh, youthful boy. And similarly, even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself actually tells that when he, in the 8th chapter, at the beginning, after Arjuna's inquiry, when he tells about the time of death, because that was one of the questions of Arjuna, like what's the destination then, and there he explains that whatever, like famously, that whatever state of mind we have at that time, whatever we think of, that's what we attain. And thus Krishna tells, so tasmat sarvesha kaleshu mam manusmara yudacha, so Arjuna, fight, but always think of me. So do your duty, but think of me. And then, for that reason, then he, in text 9, he briefly explains about himself as well. Like, because thinking of Krishna means not just thinking of him as an ordinary human being again, but as in the proper consciousness. And there he, 2 or 3 words that I want to pick out of the verse here, from, like I heard that from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, is the first in the verse is Kavim, means the one who knows everything. So we know a Kavi is a poet or a very learned person. And Puranam, then the second word, the oldest. So, and because the general conception, mundane conception, would then be that, yes, if you think of the Lord as just the old wise man, then like kind of like the Christian conception of God. But then the next word, the last in the first line, is Anushasitaram, which means the controller. And also from that we can understand that that is already, from a mundane conception, that's a contradiction as well, because how can the oldest man, how can he then be at the same time so powerful that he's controlling everything? But of course we know that that is simply a completely foolish conception of God as becoming old. He is the oldest because he is the original personality, the origin of everything, the summum bonum, but of course he is there's never any deterioration, rather always ever increasing beauty and opulences in the Lord. And so that was in terms of his being ever youthful, even though being the oldest. And then Prabhupada also cites the examples of that, refers even to the Lord's devotees, as we see on the example of when Achamal is rescued by the Vishnudutas, who also have those same features. And then further, another interesting point the Prabhupada makes here is that saying the allegation that the impersonal Brahman appears in this material world by accepting a material body is quite absurd. So, because that's what Mayavadis think, and what many people think, that actually the Supreme is Brahman, and Krishna, yes, he is not an ordinary person, but he's he appeared by from the Brahman, assumed in the mode of goodness, assumed his personality. But yeah, Prabhupada tells here that is actually quite absurd. And similarly, we find that in the third canto, when Maitreya Muni explains to Vidura, after Vidura met first Uddhava, and then Uddhava told him that Maitreya is near around here, he will tell you whatever you inquire. And so after first Vidura, he knows that Maitreya just heard along with Uddhava from the Lord, and so he knows that he would have very confidential knowledge about the Lord and everything, but still he doesn't straight away ask him about those pastimes or things that the Lord inquired from, but rather he takes on a humble position, and also for the benefit of all the others, he starts inquiring, especially his first question is not even directly about the knowledge, so to say, but rather the first inquiry he makes is on devotional service. And so why? Because he says, please explain to me the process of devotional service, so that the Lord may be pleased to impart knowledge upon me. And as we know, Krishna himself tells in Bhagavad Gita 10.10 that he gives the knowledge unto those who sincerely try to please him. And so that's the mood of Vidura there, first of all. But interestingly enough, still then immediately after that he actually then asks about the Purusha avatars, and Maitreya Muni explains to him thus then, in course of that, the whole creation. We know that's what the Purusha avatars come for the material creation, and the Vishwarup for that, like how the universe takes shape and is represented in those different aspects. And after all of that, then in the 7th chapter, then Vidura clears up two doubts that many people might have hearing about the Lord's creation. In other words, hearing about how the Lord deals with the material energy, and how he is, especially after hearing the Virat Rupa, where we hear how actually everything is can also be seen as part of the Lord's body. Of course, we know that Virat Rupa is not his transcendental body, but still, it's the Lord's personal touch is there everywhere as well. So that's why Vidura asks then how is it that the Lord, being transcendental, but still he's at the same time he seems to be acting with the material energy, and the second question he has is in regard to the Jiva. How is it that the pure soul becomes implicated in this material energy? So two very basic, important questions. And for the first question in regard to Ishvara, in regard to the Lord, Maitreya says that he doesn't talk much about it, but rather he, similarly like Prabhupada tells in this purport, that it's simply, Prabhupada tells here absurd. Maitreya Muni, which word does he use? He says it's it's not simply not logical. That to think that the Lord is unconditioned by material nature, but at the same time, but at the same time would get under illusion, that is simply against all logic. So he's pretty much cuts him off just like that, because it's very clear actually. If you have any basic understanding of the Lord as being the supreme personality of Godhead, transcendental, then there's no question of him becoming affected by material energy, no matter how much he creates and acts also in the material world. So, and in terms of the jiva, we know it's simply, Maitreya Muni explains there also that the jiva is always pure originally, the soul, but it's simply due to misidentification with matter that we get implicated like that. And after that, and further then, and Vidura also asked about, or rather, Maitreya Muni then also gives straight away the solution, tells how to realize that. To come out of that is of course through the process of devotional service. And there, as in many other parts of Bhagavatam, we hear again that this knowledge to get out, to understand, to get liberated, is not something that we have to acquire extraneously, but rather it comes naturally if we engage in devotional service. And like as told in the famous verse in the first canto, 1-7, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Parayochitaha Janatiyasha Vairakyam Jnanam Chayata Haitukam, that knowledge and detachment comes as a causeless byproduct of devotional service to Lord Vasudeva. And that is reflected there in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam particularly many times, because also in course of describing the creation, Maitreya Muni, he, after describing like how the Lord manifested all the elements, and then he describes how the sense devatas, the demigods in charge of all the different senses, how they prayed to the Lord because they were unable to execute their service without the help of the Lord, without the Lord further investing his energy to get everything running. So, and there they praise the Lord, especially his lotus feet, and they explain there, and Prabhupada expands on it, that's because first of all, this is like you can be free from miseries only if you have knowledge, transcendental knowledge. But this, it's not something extraneously to be acquired, but simply because the Lord's lotus feet are also full of transcendental knowledge. So simply by approaching his lotus feet, you get free from the material miseries, because the Lord bestows upon you this knowledge. And like Prabhupada says there, for example, that the Lord personally takes charge of dissipating the darkness of ignorance from the heart of the devotee. And so that's there already. That's in the 5th chapter, the 3rd canto. And then again, we see it with, and similarly also, of course, with the whole sections with already in 2nd canto and then in 3rd canto with Lord Brahma, his famous pastime as the creator, that he was able only to understand the Lord and to do his whole service of creation only by being enlightened from the heart by the Lord. So by pleasing the Lord, by doing penances for the Lord's pleasure. And again here in the 7th chapter with Vidura, we see that he also then expresses his gratitude to Maitreya Muni in that way. And he tells in 3.7.18 that Artabhavam, Artabhavam vinishchitya pratitasya pinatmanaha tam chapi yushma charana sevayaham paranude. So Vidura tells to Maitreya Muni that I now, after hearing all of that, for which he already heard to that point, like about the creation and about the position of the Lord and the Jiva, that now I can understand that this cosmic manifestation is false. And although it appears to be real, but but further, because this means, yes, he can understand, so he has the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge. But then further he says that and I'm confident that by serving your feet, I will be able to give up this false idea. So, which in other words means that, but only by then further serving the devotee, will we be able to also fully realize it. And like in Bhagavad Subodhini, the beautiful sentence for that explanation is there that service converts conviction into realization. So, and we know that, and it's also, and we know, but even for the knowledge that he got to that point, for theoretical knowledge, it's also, we know, not something that you can acquire by your endeavor, but it's also already, that is the causeless mercy of the Lord, but then to actually realize it takes even more mercy. So that's especially then only possible by serving the devotees, by serving the lotus feet. And yeah, and then to the last part of the purport, Prabhupada tells about, so now the question is, why the Lord, who is omnipotent, comes here to diminish the burden created upon the world by the unscrupulous kingly order? Certainly the Lord does not need to come here personally for such purposes, and so forth. So the point being that we know the Lord has all his potencies available at all times, which can do anything and everything for him. So that he wouldn't need to come to kill anyone or to manage anything personally. So we know the real reason is out of the famous verse of Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya chatushkritam, is the first part, is that of protecting his devotees. And not only, like, even for protection he wouldn't need to come personally in one sense, but especially for the pleasure of the devotees. And also another aspect of that Prabhupada tells here is that only by his personally coming like that enables then his devotees, and also his potential devotees, to other souls who might have the fortune to hear it from the devotees, to hear about those activities of the Lord in the material world. So, like Prabhupada quotes here, Bhagavad Gita 9:13-14, that the Mahatmas, the great souls, they always chant the Lord's glories. And so Prabhupada tells here that but he actually descends to exhibit his transcendental activities in order to encourage his pure devotees who want to enjoy life by chanting the glories of the Lord. So, yeah, that's also kind of like for ordinary people, they might more they can understand more easily. Okay, yes, the Lord comes to establish religion, kill the bad elements, the demons, protect his devotees. But this sounds like he comes to give so that because the devotees want to enjoy life by chanting his glories. Sounds kind of like less important, but actually, yes, hearing is, the Lord is personally associating with the Lord, as we know, and and that's especially in this age the main process, how to associate with the Lord. So that is the utmost importance of his descent. Like everything else he could manage very easily, but he mercifully gives us this Krishna Katha. And one more point from the third canto that I read just like yesterday at the end is in regard to why is it so important to understand the Lord's transcendental position, not just jump into the leelas, as the Lord personally tells actually to Lord Brahma after he had seen him and glorified him in different prayers. Then Lord Garbhodakashaya Vishnu tells in 3.939 that I'm pleased by your description of me in terms of my transcendental qualities. And so Prabhupada explains that it's Gunamayam that refers especially to the Lord having transcendental qualities. And further then in the next verse he tells that any human being who prays like Lord Brahma gets, his fulfillment of all his desires will be fulfilled. I just took out some phrases. And Prabhupada explains there that what does it mean, any human being who prays like Lord Brahma? Doesn't mean that anyone who just picks out the verse tells it one and then the Lord will fulfill any foolish material desires that we may have, but rather it means Lord Brahma, he prayed for the Lord's satisfaction. He didn't pray for any ulterior motive because he knew that, he already was a pure devotee, and in that particular situation he knew that, his motive, so to say, other than simply pleasing the Lord, was to get the Lord's mercy, to become empowered to do his service, to do the creation, because he knew that was the Lord's desire. And further, there in his famous prayers, he also prays that the Lord may protect him, that he would never get proud of his being the creator, and so forth. So, that means to pray like Lord Brahma, means to, without ulterior motive, but to simply please the Lord, and thus the Lord will then fulfill all spiritual desires. Okay, so we're just on time. If there's any quick question or comment, otherwise, yes, Prabhu. Practicing detachment. He's that part is still talking generally about yoga, not only bhakti yoga, but of course we know, especially in this age, it's practically only by bhakti yoga. Any yogi who properly follows the path does acquire slowly detachment, because he realizes that he's not the body, and that there's higher pleasure even in impersonal realization, or and at least if you're more in the mode of goodness also, then you face less miseries. But by practice means that it's not that bhakti yoga, it's not it's not a religious belief, but we have to continuously practice whatever we have to do, chanting and service, reading, everything. Okay. Hare Krishna. Kantarachima Bhaktam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.